And welcome everybody to another episode of Stu and the Nun, episode 381. Stu has a night off. I'm joined by my good friend Doug, a long-term friend of the
Hey,
show,
Rob.
multiple-time guest.
Hey,
Afternoon,
everyone.
Doug. How are you,
Good
sir?
evening. Doing great. How are you, Rob?
I'm doing well. How are things down in
Excellent.
the communist city of Austin?
Yeah, well, I'm a little. They're very much still communist, but fortunately, I'm a little bit further north. Maybe not far enough north. But
Right.
It's still warm down here. I wish, now that's October, it would at least stop being 95. That would be fabulous. Can we just stop it at 91 degrees? That would be great. But other than that, we're great. Rob, how are things in Arkansas?
Doing great. It was pretty warm here today. It was 90 degrees, but I mean, it has been getting down, in the end of the 50s at night, which is nice. Get up first thing in the morning, head to the gym, and it's a nice 58, 59 degrees. So
I think we've hit 62 has been our lowest on a clear night, and so far. So I'm envious. Yes. We need more of that. Send it here.
I haven't heard much out of Austin lately. No big news out of Austin. Is there, am I just that far removed now, or is there nothing coming out of there?
I think it's just they're people are people are discovering Austin's not the cool little town that they've always heard it was, and so I think that could be part of it. Actually, was it ACL starts this weekend, right? Not that I care. Austin city limits and stuff. So you might be hearing some stuff. I don't know. God forbid, and everything will be nice and calm and peace, love, and dope, or whatever's going to happen here during Austin city limits. But so maybe you'll hear something coming up in the next week or two during that festival of peace and love, I guess. But
I see Abbott in the news. I see Abbott in the news, but I don't see, Austin specific. Usually there's something crazy going on in Austin.
Mostly it's the school district. The AISD is, they have failing campuses, and the state might intervene and take it over. I think they took over a school district or two in Houston. They had to intervene and improve the scores and maybe close some schools that were failing. So that I think I think we're on strike 2, or maybe getting to be ready to strike 3 for the AISD, and and the population of students is down. So they're just trying to justify their existence in many cases with the current number of open schools they have, and then the standards aren't being met. So that's been a highlight. And I did learn that while Austin's always enforcing, smart water usage, don't waste water, we're in a perpetual drought and we're all going to die, that sort of thing. They're the biggest water wasters in the city of Austin because of all the leaky pipes and, failing infrastructure or whatever. So they waste more water than anybody by far, either if it's a corporation or a neighborhood or what have you. So I learned that. So that was interesting. So just more I don't think you're surprised, but
Well, government and waste goes together like peas and carrots. I mean, that's just the way it
they're
is, right?
they're keeping the trend. That's for sure. They're maintaining the expectation, and it's low. So anyway, that's the highlights I know. So you're
Do
basically in the
you
loop. ACL, AISD, and water. Go ahead.
do you see a bigger trend of homeschooling or private schooling,
Yes.
out of a lot of things, and the more these schools, the numbers reducing?
I think the numbers are reducing for a couple of reasons, and that's a very good point. I think I think the trend was already on the upward swing for homeschooling, and then I think during COVID, a lot of parents saw what was going on, so they pulled their kids out. So I think that you're very savvy to point that out. That's one of the demographic hits that Austin's taking, and actually LISD, Lander Independent School District, they're talking about closing the elementary school that my son and daughter went to 20 years ago, the one that my wife worked as a school nurse, and then there's another one, and there's like 3 elementary schools in the neighborhood we used to live in, and they're all on the chopping block because they're underwater, hundreds of $1 million, because it's due to that. It's more homeschooling, and the people aren't leaving those neighborhoods after their kids, move out of the house, as much, I guess, was expected. So, those people are like us. Well, we did, but then a lot of other people are staying there. So then, but their kids are growing up. So there's no more, the
Right.
influx of new kids is lower too. So they're just getting hammered, and then they're bad decisions, and, building all these schools, buying all this land. Then the growth didn't follow. So now they're stuck with land and then brick and mortar buildings that they don't have the bodies for. So yeah, it's kind of like the perfect storm, demographically and
Right.
financially, and it's unfortunate to see, but you know, they've already, I think they're already talking about raising taxes and stuff like that down there. So I'm not in that county anymore. So let's all thank God for that.
Well, I still have property in Texas, in Southeast Texas, and
Okay.
I'm still paying the taxes on that. And in one year, my taxes went up, I think 52%, because the school district built a brand new stadium, turf and everything. And this is a 3A school. At one point, they were a 2A school, and then they kind of got a couple more people and became a 3A. But my taxes went up, and there's nothing on the land. It's 10 acres
Right.
of blank, and my taxes went up 52% in 1 year.
Oh man. But are they going to you going to get a brick like in the stadium with your name on it saying this was made possible by,
I don't know.
citizen?
I'm just ready to sell the property.
Sorry.
I need to finish the paperwork and get it sold.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
That's
And
what I
that's one
need to
bad thing
do.
about Texas. The property taxes that's what they get you here. There's no state income tax, but yet, it's like water. It's like, hey, we're not getting in here. We're going to, so
Yeah.
they get it from somewhere. So
Yeah.
anyway,
Well, let's jump right into the
yeah.
the big topic, the big thing today. So Pete Hegseth spoke to every. I guess was it 1 star and up, or was it only certain stars?
Yep. I, I'm a, I, I'm not exactly sure, but I would assume it was all the general grade, officers on up. So, anybody above, I guess, '07 and above,
Hmm.
I'm
And I saw
guessing.
some senior
So
enlisted in the audience as well. So I did see some
in the
senior enlisted.
non-clapping audience, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
we'll get into
So
that too. But
so he gave
I don't think
a
they're
very
supposed to clap.
long,
But anyway, go ahead.
yeah, very very long, very very energetic, very reminiscent of back when you and I were in the military, type of thing. So
Amen.
what was
Yes.
your first impression of that speech?
It is almost like you're getting a briefing at the first of the 501st Airborne, the only Arctic Airborne Battalion in the United States Army circa 1991, 1992. Either like a battalion thing or maybe a Comanche company, from either like a change of command, you're getting a new company commander or something. And he's just, that would be like your company commander, let's say, right? And he's just coming in and just laying out the expectations and the standards. And in nine, so for me, there was nothing in there that was foreign or Oh my God. I mean, I had an, oh my God, I can't believe he's saying that for a different reason. Because I'm like, oh my God, he's finally, somebody's like stayed in the office. So that's kind of what I felt like. It felt like, I'm like a lieutenant and I'm reporting in and to battalion and I'm meeting my battalion commander and he just gives the, whatever 38-minute speech or whatever Hegseth did, but he's giving it to you either directly or you're out on some officer professional development outing and you're learning about something and he's just going over the standards. And we have all kinds of standards, Rob, at least in that unit. I mean, my God, we had to have a high and tight and yada yada. We even had a PT card to just lead PT. We had to have a PT card standard. It was like a laminated thing we had to have with us all the time. So that's what it was like for me. So to me, I'm just like, wow, it's just like we went back in time. 35 years for me versus the 7 years I was on active duty till when I got out in 97. It was I thought it was already changing rapidly. But I don't know, what were your thoughts?
Well, so I was in kind of the same time you were, and I was having a little bit of nostalgia back watching the commercials on TV and hearing the recruiter talk to you, and not that I'm comparing Hegseth to Patton because he is in no way Patton, but Patton is always one of my favorite uh, people in history. And the movie Patton with George C. Scott is one of my favorite movies of all time. I've seen it
Yeah,
countless times. And that opening
in
speech, and
speech.
yes, and he talks about you don't win wars by dying for your country. You win wars by making the other SOB die for his country. And it was a very much in line with that kind of speech and setting the stage for putting our military, it's almost like resetting the deck, right? Resetting the deck,
Yes.
reshuffling and resetting the deck of cards, after you just got done playing 52 pickup and the cards were all over the place and you've got them all shuffled and back in a nice even stack and
Right.
ready to go
And
forward.
and I guess for me it was great to hear, but on the other hand, Rob, I'm kind of makes me sick that he even has to do this. He even felt compelled to do the. Now I understand that there's probably a greater audience than the general officers and senior NCOs that were there in person. Since I think it's good that they did. It wasn't like he got them all together in a closed room. Maybe that happened after or before, whatever. But at least this speech was televised for the world. There wasn't because to me the lead up to the speech made it sound like it was going to be some kind of loyalty test I don't know, some kind of they were, oh, it's secret, this is unprecedented, this has never happened before, blah blah. Well, even if that's true, who cares? It's just sad that we had to have, like you said, this reset. And my question is, why have like, I guess, my generation, who's now in charge, your generation of the military in our age group, why has it drifted so far where you know um, there's like retired people or whatever, and I have some headlines I'd like to share, but based upon some of these reactions. But why is it so shocking? It's almost like everyone has forgot what the core reason you're there is: to close with and destroy the enemy. Fight America's wars, fight and win. By the way, not just fight and win. Compel the enemy to our will, and for God, country, Chevrolet, and apple pie, and baseball, and Coke and Pepsi and Costco. So all that stuff. And I don't understand why it is to people who should know better, who made a career of this stuff, man. And I have at least a partial theory, is that I think there's, when I was in ROTC, it was like, oh, they're trying to always win hearts and minds on campus, right? Either with the faculty or with the administration. The Army ROTC isn't here to, intimidate. Oh, we're good people or whatever. It was like, it wasn't. They tried to sell. It's not the Army on campus. It's the campus in the Army. I think that's a word for word phrase that they use to justify these things. So I almost think that if this is truly that bad, where he had to do this speech and X amount of percent of those generals are like horrified and freaked out, they've been in Ivy League schools or whatever, and getting their masters and doctorates and whatever way too long. Because now, because I think they're too like intelligentsia now versus like what you were saying at the beginning, a patent, right?
Mhm.
And I remember seeing an example of this, seeing Petraeus on some PBS interview show late at night. I don't know. This is probably like 15 years ago, probably longer. It was when he was still, before he was head of CIA or whatever. He was still in the Army, 4-star general. And I don't even remember why I was up, Rob. I was just channel surfing and I stopped on it. And, I wanted to like Petraeus. So I'm like, oh, cool, West Pointer, blah, blah, blah. And the more I listened to him, the more pissed off I got. I'm like, what is this like intelligentsia, college professor type thing? Um, and I kind of saw a little bit of it, kind of flashback to like an S3 I had, and I just couldn't stand him because he was just trying to do that stuff, and it just doesn't motivate me. It angers me because it's like he's so focused on Charlie. It's the Charlie Rose show. That's what it was. He's just trying to like, I don't know, suck up and press Charlie versus just tell us what the hell is really going on over there with his
Right.
coin, counterinsurgency. It's supposed to be this brilliant strategy that was going to, keep us free for the next 300 years. Well, how did that work out? But anyway, that's another story. But I just kind of feel like there's just too much of that. And they're almost like, it's like beneath themselves to even talk about like what it takes to, close with and destroy the enemy. It's almost like I
Sure.
think they're too good. I don't know. What's your
Well,
impression?
so winning wars is an objective, right? So you can say, take that hill, that's an objective. You can say we take the next 15 hills and we push the enemy back and we weaken and kill the enemy, and that's an objective. Winning hearts and minds is implementing an ideology. That is not combat, that is not killing, and that is a long-term type thing. And
Right.
what you end up doing with that is you end up with 20 years of war like we just had. You also end up with not winning the hearts and minds of a lot of people and creating
Right.
more enemies, and you create this perpetual cycle, right?
Right.
So,
Right.
but the one of the things that I mean, it happened before, and maybe I didn't see it as much because I was, in the military or younger and didn't pay attention as much. But the politicization of the '07s and above, and even your
Yes.
senior leaders, right? The politics that have gotten involved in that has just gotten out of hand. And I tell people all the time, and even today, I think there is a lot of unknown about the military by the civilian side, right? And I have this conversation
Yes.
with my wife all the time, and I tell her the military is not a social experiment. There are
No.
a million ways that I can say why you can't serve. Whether you're missing limbs, whether you have certain color blindness will at times not let you serve, or will not let you serve in certain
Con-
functions. you know uh,
convictions.
Yes,
You
convictions,
know.
tattoos in certain spots. Those things will not let you join the military. But we've taken that away and said, okay, well now we're going to try all of these other things. We've turned it into a social experiment and said, well, why can't this person join? Because that's
Right.
not a fighting force. That person is a perpetual person who is going to need medical attention forever, and is combat ineffective, and that does not win wars, right? And we can't have a military that is a social experiment. That's not what it's
Right.
for. you know
And
um,
to your point, no, 100%. This chasm between the civilian perception and what the military is for, and I think a lot of this came out of our success of Gulf War One. It was made to look so easy, even a caveman can do it, right? Oh, you just push some buttons and blow some people up, and you're done in 4 days. Every war is going to be like that, Rob. Every single one of them. And so I think that led in a lot of the, well, why can't women be dismounted infantry coming out of the back of a Bradley fighting vehicle or whatever. Why not? Because look, it was so awesome. It was so easy with, and that's the exception. And I have my own theories on that, why it was, made to look so easy. But it was just years and years of training and prep for that. But with everything Hegseth was basically talking, that was an example of it, right? I mean, you could, but back to you segued perfectly into it, but like the civilians' view of it here, I'm just going to read some headlines real quick. MSNBC, and all I did was Google Pete Hegseth speech today. That's all I did. And looked on headlines. MSNBC, Pete Hegseth's speech to generals crossed an ominous line. Ooh. Air Force veteran blasts Pete Hegseth's chilling message to women in the military. So let's see. Wait, here's another one. This is a good one. This is from the Daily Express over in the UK. The Trump administration is waging war on fat troops. So should the UK. Here's another one. This is a new one. Do you realize how many black men you're going to lose? Troops online are revolting against Pete Hegseth's beard crackdown. And then, related, this is from the Huffington Post. J.D. Vance praises Pete Hegseth for lecturing military leaders about facial hair. I'm like, well, J.D. Vance is not in the military. He was. Now that he's out, he can grow a long ponytail. He can do whatever the hell he wants. So they're trying to why they're trying to draw this false, just unbelievable. Oh, wait, here's one. Here's one where George Washington would disagree with Pete Hegseth about fitness for command and what makes a warrior. Really? Is this guy channeling? Is he doing a seance? Is he channeling, GW into his living room, and the spirit of GW told him that? I mean, this is just. Oh, wait, veterans see costs. This is New York Times. See costs and risk in Hegseth's rewind to 1990, which is an interesting, because that's what we started with, right, Rob? 1990. Right. I'm like, well, that's when I went in. So anyway, it's just, again, I'm just highlighting the misperception between just civilians, and then there's apparently some in the military or who were in the military, like they're just horrified. And I'm like, oh, you can't talk to generals like this. Well, you know what? I think a lot of these generals did need to be dressed down, because they probably haven't been dressed down for some of them probably ever, but not since, they were at some school where they're yelling at you, trying to see how badly that you want to stay there and make it through. And so like 35 years ago. So I think these guys did need, what was it called? Tighten your shot group. I think they needed their shot group tightened. And I hope it continues. But again, it's just, I get it from the civilians and the liberals and stuff. Wait, let me stop there. The liberals hate the military, right? Yeah. So why do they should love this, that these generals who represent all its evil for trying to defend the United States of America, which is inherently evil from day one, original sin, all that stuff. Now they're trying to defend the generals, when I remember not too long ago, back to Petraeus, remember it was General Betray Us. I mean, they turned on that guy, and I think that guy has got Stockholm syndrome. I still think he's trying to suck up to the libs to try to gain their affection or whatever. I'm like, dude, if you're not above that by now, dude, you don't need to be a general. I'm sorry, you're not there to go to cocktail parties. But I'm sorry, I'm just a
no, I mean, it's pretty obvious why the left is pissed off, because they have spent the last, at least since Obama's first term, replacing all of those conservative minded military generals with leftist politicians. And in those spots, that's what they've done. They've created this pipeline of weak leaders, because I mean, you've probably served under some that were not very good, and I've served under some that were not very good. And when you have weak, incapable leaders, you create a weak, incapable force. And I think the liberals have done that intentionally, replacing all of these people and putting these things in place. I mean, you had I forget.
That's a good point.
I think it was I don't think it was the commandant, but it was one of the Marines was saying, "Oh yeah, you know, there's nothing wrong with transgender in the military. No, there is, because that person is combat
Yeah.
ineffective. You know, that person
Right.
is not capable of going to combat. You know, they require, you know, countless surgeries if they're going to
Hormones,
go through it. Hormones, they're
hormones.
going to go through.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're incapable of doing that. Now, don't get me wrong. I have absolutely zero problem with women in the military. I served with women in the military. I have no problems. I don't even have a problem with them in combat roles. But what I do have a problem with, and I saw this under Obama, is when you begin lowering standards to
Yes.
get women into those places. There are plenty of women who can meet those higher standards. And I would consider it a slap in the face if you were to lower the standards for me to get there, because I'm
Yeah. You
supposed to
would.
shoot for that highest level
You would
and not
think.
be given that lower standard. And when I've always said, and I've said this for probably 20 years, there are three pillars to the military to me, and that is discipline, physical fitness, and training. And if you start laxing on any of those, you know, like
Right.
the stool, right? The stool with three legs is
Yeah.
is
Exactly.
always
It's out of
well,
balance. Yeah.
you start getting it out of balance. And
Go wobbly.
one of the things I noticed early on in GWAT is they started lowering those standards across your fitness, your training, and your discipline, right? Because they needed more bodies to the front. But that's what happens when you have long, drawn out wars that should have had
Yes.
an objective, should have said, okay, here's our objective, let's shoot for that, instead of this never ending, you know,
Right.
win the hearts and minds. And 20 years later, you know, multiple generations of people have gone through that. So,
Right.
um,
No, and I would go. I'm going to go back further. I think it started again, like I said, the Gulf War. I think the success there in 1990, 1991, coupled with Clinton coming in '92. Because I remember that. I mean,
mhm,
I remember my battalion commander. We had. We were doing some stuff with the British Special Boat Service or something. They came to Alaska and they were competing. They kicked our ass in all like the Nordic events, by the way. They don't look like they're in shape, but they were anyway. So, but I remember him just because it was right after he got elected or getting ready, right like that January, whenever he was getting ready to take over. He was just incensed about the changing policies and all that stuff. So that I think that I think there's never a silver bullet, right? I think it's a gradual thing, and I think even Hegseth kind of hit it too. Ever since we've been the Department of Defense. I agree. I think there's a mindset change there. Even what the logo on the crest of the War Department was changed when it became the Defense Department. The head of the eagle changed from looking at the quiver of arrows in its one talon
mhm,
foot to the laurel, whatever. So they turned it to be peace, and everybody wants peace, right? But
sure.
you know, I don't want to live as a serf either under the despotism of some either foreign or domestic. So we've got to be. If anything has told us about history, I'm sorry. I don't like spending gazillions of dollars on defense, and I never really willing to do what they trained me to do, Rob. I didn't want to. I didn't wake up and go, gee, I can't wait to, you know, um, aim center of mass and squeeze the trigger. And so no, I just like this is just part of the deal that I signed up for, and I don't again, it's just amazing that what do these people think they're there for? I think you kind of hit it, like social experiment. Are you just there to break the glass ceiling? If that's your case, are you there just to literally intentionally lower standards? I mean, again, I think there's a broad spectrum, right? I mean, sometimes this is just an accidental, we're fat, dumb, and happy because we're a country over here. We have a big ocean on the left and a big ocean on the right, and we have Canada, and we're blessed to have Canada and Mexico to the north and south. So, um, so we can, I guess, we have this somewhat comfort of that, and I think we're almost like Rome now, Rob. I feel like you and I could be having the same conversation, and 415 AD. You and I are sitting around at some coffee shop outside of Rome, two ex-Legionnaire guys going, man, the Legion's really watered down, man.
Right.
We're
Yeah.
getting our ass kicked over here, and these barbarians are coming from the north, and they just all this other stuff, and we got generals, fighting with each other for power and all this corruption. And I'm like, oh my God, I feel like the parallels, nothing's ever perfect, but there's some
Right.
definitely parallels there where you start to water everything down and then there's nothing left holding it up. I like your stool, your legs of the stool, because those are so interrelated, discipline, physical
Yep.
fit. It's all related.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm glad Hegseth hit that so hard, because it's
Well, you
important.
brought up a good
That's why
point.
it's a young man's game.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
brought up a good point about ROI, right? I mean, the American people spend a lot of tax dollars on the Department of War, and what have we gotten out of it? We've gotten 20 years of
yeah,
peacekeeping, spreading through the globe, and probably now 2 generations of wounded and PTSD and suicide, numbers through the roof. So that's what we've
yes.
gotten for our taxes, right? And we can prevent that from happening. Now, this doesn't mean by any means that the Department of War is not going to still continue to do some of the great things that they do. One of
Oh,
the greatest
sure.
things I like that we used to do all the time was disaster relief. I mean, you could park an aircraft carrier off of some island and completely re-energize that island, food, water, medical, from day one, right? And
Hmm.
that's great capabilities. Not that we're not going to continue to do those things, but what we're not going to do is spend 20 years in a country that is now kicked. I'm probably going to get hate for this, but kick the shit out of us and kick the shit out of Russia. 2 superpowers have tried to go in there, and neither one of us has come away victorious.
I would throw in Alexander the Great too, even though I read a book about that a while ago. Even though, yeah, it wasn't a good time for him either, because it was like the same stuff, different day, man. All these tribals that they were all rivals and fighting amongst themselves. But as soon as there's this foreign invader, they all unite.
Hmm. Yeah.
And in the book, they're going, "Hey, we know you Greeks are going to leave someday." They would even have like their interpreters, with the Greek units, and they'd be like, "Yeah, I'm helping you now, but I know, let me just check my. Well, they didn't have watches back then, but the little
The
sand,
sundial.
the hourglass of sand. Hey, we're gonna outlast you. You're gonna come in here." And Alexander would like kick their ass in these epic battles. It was freaking brilliant, unbelievable. They just absorb the losses. They fade away back into the hills and the mountains, and they'll come back out, and then they're ambushing you and doing low intensity conflict. And then anyway, the Greek soldiers were so paranoid that, and of course they had the drugs there, the poppy fields.
Mhm.
They called it something else, but a lot of those Greek soldiers, at least in the book, were like addicted to it because they didn't want to go to sleep, Rob, because they're like, I don't know which one of these guys is going to come at me, so they're like completely freaking paranoid, and they
Sure.
don't want to sleep, and they're always armed because they've seen their buddies get killed by the friendly villagers when they roll up on a bit, and then they started becoming more and more aggressive and doing some bad stuff. But anyway, to your point, it's just, what are we doing there? I mean,
Yeah.
what did we get from that? I mean, did we even get any rare earth elements? Oh, and didn't Trump recently say he wants Bagram Air Force Base back? Didn't he just say that like a week or
Yeah.
two ago? I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my God. Or something bad's going to happen to you. I mean, who do you make that request to? I mean,
Right. Yeah.
I don't know who do you send the letter of, yeah, you gotta get out of
Sign
here,
here for this deed that you're going to sign over to me, so I'm going
Yeah,
to take it back.
that's right.
You know,
We're gonna
here's give me that pink slip, and
who's
I'm
in
gonna,
charge, who's the
yeah.
authority figure, and then what do we do with it? We're just going to be like, it's going to be like Fort Apache. We're going to have this Air Force base, or base just
Right.
surrounded constantly by non-friendly, hostile
It would
indigenous
it would
people.
become Israel. It would become Israel too.
Mm, yeah, I
Where it's
mean,
constantly getting bombed and constantly, we would have to put the Iron Dome over it, and
yes.
and for what? For what purpose?
I
So we can have
I
another
don't.
space, you know.
I guess I'm just guessing here. I thought it was in like a strategic location that's somehow threat to China too, or so. I mean, I just remember all like back when we let it go 4 years ago, all the things we supposedly lost by doing that. But yeah, I'm just trying to figure out, okay, cool. You do like an airfield seizure with the 82nd Airborne tomorrow. Okay, cool. We secured the base. It's probably needs a bazillion dollars of, renovations by now. Okay, now what?
It could
What
very
do we do
well
now?
be Trump being Trump too. I
It
mean,
could be. It could just
he
be some
likes to say
things,
weird things like
but
that
it's
sometimes to
funny.
send the Democrats off into some, some tangent, right?
But anyway,
Which
yeah, and maybe there
look
was a
look what I'm doing over
different
here while
reason.
he's doing something over here.
But it's
It
so
very
funny. I
well
want
could
it
be.
back.
Yeah,
I want it back, or something bad's going to happen to you. It's just so funny. But
yeah.
but back to the political correctness stuff. I remember a long time. Remember, it used to be, at least in Vietnam, a search and destroy mission. Search and
Hmm.
destroy. You'd go out, look for Charlie or the NVA or whatever. Then it became, when I was in, search and attack. But wait, then it became clear and sweep. What the hell is that?
Right.
That's what I do when I do that in my garage, Rob. I clear and sweep my garage. I don't I don't clear and sweep, you know, hostile indigenous forces in a low intensity warfare. So I'm just saying, even when I was in, I saw these um, watering down, dumbing down, not calling something what it is, just
Sure.
trying to make it more, I guess, acceptable to the president of Harvard. I don't know. I don't know who the audience was for that, but I just remember that one. That's why I wanted to share that, because I'm like, oh God, I
Well,
remember that clear and sweep.
we've seen over the last, probably 2 decades, at least the last decade, this hijack of the American language, right? This the English
Yes,
language, and manipulating things to mean something that they completely not. Like the word racism. Racism, when you and I grew up, was
oh
hating
yeah,
somebody simply for their race, and then now racism has become, when one group who holds power over another one hates them or whatever. No, no, because what that does, that hijacking of that language, that says that you can never be racist against a white person, which you and I
right.
both know is absolutely bullshit.
Abs-
That's absolutely
Absolutely.
bullshit. You can be racist against anybody if you hate them for their race.
Yes.
And that's just one example of the hijacking of the English language that I absolutely hate.
Right.
I hate it.
Detest.
Yeah, I
Right.
detest that.
Right.
And your example was, changing that lingo, going from the Department of War or the War Department to the Department of Defense. It's always something with
It's
these people.
just, and again, I mean, I can see the DoD, but I even seen it in like the Boy Scouts. My son was an Eagle Scout and stuff, so I was like a den leader and all that stuff. Because we're in it for, I don't know how many years we were in it, from soup to nuts, beginning to end. And even my daughter, who's a Gold Star, I'm just sorry, Gold Star Girl Scout, the equivalent. So we're in these organizations for years and years in one capacity or another. And even there, it was starting to dumb it down, like towards the end when my kids were in it. They're both grown adults now, but even then we're like, because I was like, well, you're getting away from, you're focused on these things, and you kind of said earlier, you're focused, but the core mission is what? We're, like in the
Yeah.
Boy Scouts, the core mission is just make these kids good citizens, and send them out in the
Be
country,
prepared.
and to do great things in whatever job or profession they're in. And same with the girls. And then we just got away from that. It was all about this group and that group, and now it's, it can't be the Boy Scouts anymore. Now it's just Scouts or something. I don't even know. See, again, it's just changing all these labels and stuff. And it's like, what's wrong with having Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts? I mean, it was fine. I mean, my daughter had, all this stuff about you're forcing these things on your kids based upon their gender, whatever. Rob, my daughter had every opportunity to play with all the stuff my son had: GI Joe, Legos, toy gun, all that
Pocket
stuff.
knives, all that.
She didn't. She gravitated to stuffed animals and stuff like that, and that's cool. I mean, it's fine, but it just, she had every opportunity. But that's just, so I've seen it in my own life, just like natural, um, likes and dislikes, or I'm attracted to this, I want to do this, and just different pursuits. And like, that's what makes this great. I mean, I've been married for 34 years. I'm like, that yin and the yang, masculine, feminine, it helps both of us. I mean, my God, I mean, my wife thinks of things I never would have thought, and I do, just different perspectives, and we
Right.
come together as a team, and it's awesome. So I don't know. I think we just need to, be thankful for that and not be ashamed of it now. But anyway,
Yeah.
sorry, I'm getting off on a
Well,
tangent there, but
when
it's
you
all
and I were
related.
in, because we were in the same time, I'm sure you had heard that, the phrase, there is no other color. Everybody's green, right? Everybody's
Yes,
green. That's it.
everybody
And
bleeds green. Yes,
when you start creating all of these special classes, right? Everybody has a special
yes,
class, then
yes,
nobody's special, right? And nobody should be special.
exactly.
Everybody's what's that, the Marine? Everybody's a dirtbag, right? At least when you first join, everybody's a dirtbag, right?
It's
So
right.
you can't have all these special classes. There is no special class in the military. You're there for a purpose.
Yeah,
You're there. You're a
yeah,
soldier first. I go back to, even under the Biden and started under Obama, where they started talking about pronouns in the military. We have pronouns.
yes,
It's called
yes,
captain, major, sergeant, staff sergeant. That is your pronoun, followed by your last name. Period.
right,
There
right.
is no other pronouns. That's it.
Master sergeant, sergeant first
That's
class,
it.
whatever. Yeah, exactly.
Rank
Yeah,
followed by name. Period. End of story. Why that was
right.
even allowed into the vocabulary in the
I don't know.
military is beyond me. Now I get it, in the Air Force, you call each other by their first name, Tom, Mary, Jack, whatever. But
Yeah,
in the Navy, I don't know what they do. But all you have to do is do rank followed by name, and you've covered the pronouns.
and
Period.
that's it.
It doesn't matter,
Right,
because Sisente, it doesn't matter if I'm sergeant, or captain, or whatever. There is no feminine or masculine to that.
right,
Sergeant
right.
Sisente. That's it.
Exactly.
You
Right.
know.
No, and I just don't know why so much of that leadership went along with it. I mean, do you think that some of them justify it, Rob? That I'm like, well, that's what the president said, so we have to follow orders. I mean, do you think that's, or they're, maybe these general officers are more politically savvy than you or I, hence how they've made it to those lofty positions of leadership, within the upper echelons of our military. They're almost like the weathermen from the 60s. They know which way the wind's blowing, so they just go that way to get maximum benefit for their own careers. And if it blows this way, so now we're going to see some, they're just going with the flow to whatever they need to do to get to the next level, or whatever it is their individual motivation is or goal. So
Yeah.
I don't, is that part? I mean, is that why? Who resigned after Vietnam? Who resigned after Afghanistan 4 years? Who resigned? You know, my dad resigned after Desert One in 1980. He was in the Pentagon. He was a lieutenant colonel on track to be an '06, and he says, "I can't take it anymore." And he was a Vietnam vet, and he had enough of the Carter administration. Anyway, so I can tell you at least there's one dude who resigned. He kind of, he kind of regretted it later. I should have, but he just couldn't take it anymore. So I love that he was so, um, focused on that. And I resigned, Rob, at 7 years. I knew where I was going, Rob. I was going to go to Fort Huachuca. That was my next assignment, and I was going to be some satellite company commander and I'll spend a year in Honduras or someplace helping support drug interdiction. So I was like, whatever, But I just couldn't. Even then, Rob, I saw this stuff happening, and it was a stark. I think we talked about this maybe earlier before the show a little bit. There was a stark difference between being combat arms, and from when I was an infantry officer, then when they called me back to the mothership, so to speak. Branch detailed, all this detailed infantry, but always kind of got back to the Signal Corps. Um, there was a difference, and I I had to push against it to some point with either some of my soldiers or some of my, leadership. Like, well, it still says U.S. Army on your BDU, your battle dress uniform there. I just dated myself. But so even then, because, they would be like, oh, the killers, right? Oh, there's the killers over there and we're not the killers. I'm kind of like, you kind of are. You're just doing it more remotely, right? By setting up, getting your tac sat shots in, or you're setting up okay, I'm going to really date myself here with MSE, the Lin, the Sin, and the RAW, and all that stuff, and your mobile subscriber equipment, and your DNVT, and your DNST, whatever, all those phones and stuff. But all you're doing is making it efficient for, your job is to make it efficient for that commander to, to maneuver and find, fix, and destroy the enemy. So you are a killer. You're actually, you're almost like I don't want to use the term force multiplier, but you are. I mean, because that gives the commander so many options. He's got redundant commo. He's talking to this, he's talking to if it's a joint op, he's talking to the Air Force, he's talking to the Marines and all that stuff. So so again, no, every job is important. Even if you're in the water purification unit or whatever, it's at some point, I know we like to make fun of those people, but we would make fun of the Air Force too, Rob. You know what, Rob? I'm really glad that and thankful to God that the planes that I rode in the Air Force, the mechanics did their job. The pilots didn't fly into a mountain. When we jumped out, we were in basically the right location and the right altitude, at the right time. So, it's all important. And I was like, well, thank God that all worked. And, down to the dude packing my chute over there at the rigger shed, some, E4 or something. I'm like, cool. Right. Everything, and it's just amazing how there's so many things happening in the synchronization to make all that work that I think sometimes we just got to take a step back and go, wow, that's pretty unbelievable. Even like when we're deployed forces over in Southeast Asia or Southwest Asia, I mean, every bullet, Rob, every Band-Aid, every field dressing, all that stuff has to be shipped over there. And it's amazing, the food and everything. It's just amazing that, and we're blessed that this country who can do that? Right. Can China do that? If they invade Taiwan tomorrow and they jump in 5,000 paratroopers, okay, then what happens after that? How are they going to be able to sustain them and, bring in reinforcements and take out their casualties and all that stuff? So that's what, I was talking to my son about, they invade Taiwan. But first of all, they get across this big body of water. But anyway, it's kind of like, well, what now? What happens? Oh, cool, we're here. Oh crap, we're here.
Well, what was our motto in the 18th Airborne Corps was, we can be anywhere on the globe within 18 hours or less. So, and that was, they swore by that. I'd like to think in a different universe, you and I were both at Huachuca, because I was pushing to get to Huachuca. That's where I wanted to go.
I heard it was nice.
Yeah, I wanted to go there. I'd done Germany. I ended up at Bragg, but I wanted to go to Huachuca because, like you said, they were doing trips down in Central and South America, and that's where I wanted to go next. But I ended up in Fort Bragg. So,
it's the butterfly effect, Rob. It could have been you and me sitting in Honduras in 1996 or 1997, and I'm, let's say I'm the company commander, and they're like, hey, Rob. No one's around. Is everything grounded? Because is everything grounded?
Right.
We got the shots in. All right, let's go do PT. Then we just repeat that every day. The troops good.
Generators full.
It's probably on some base that's, we don't really have to worry too much about security. Yeah. We're just probably wearing PT clothes all the time. I don't know. But that's what I imagine that would be.
One of the things I was super excited, kind of shift gears a little bit here. One of the things I was super excited about that I heard Hegseth say was he's bringing back the shark attack, the toss into the bunks, and yes, the swearing and laying hands on the troops.
Laying hands on troops.
Laying hands on troops.
I couldn't believe it either. That was pretty amazing. Yeah, I mean, I'm totally, and again, that's a thing that people go, oh my God, what's that mean? You know, what are we training these soldiers to do? You got to remember, we're gonna send them into combat against the worst people on the planet in the worst places. We would be remiss. We would be failing to do our duty to, and that's why the Army trains all that stuff. You know, throwing, you know, when you get in there, all this, you can't do anything right. You got to do 18 things at once. You're never doing it fast enough. You're never, because you're trying to, like, I think you're simulating combat right there. All this stuff is just going wrong, and you know, you got to try to do this and keep driving on and keep doing whatever. And people just don't understand it. Why do they do that? Why do they yell at you?
Yeah.
Because combat's not going to be nice, and in it, I don't
Well,
understand
one
why
of the
that's so
things,
difficult for people to understand.
one of the reasons the military works so well is because between the ages of 16 and 25, especially for men,
Yes.
not as much for women, but for men, our brains are mush and we can absorb and learn and all of that in those ages. And that's why the military works so well. And that's why
Yes.
they break you down through sleep deprivation and then build you back up to what
Build
they
you back
need
up.
you to be. Right. And
Right.
part of that is, you know, putting you under that pressure, making you think quickly on your feet when you're tired, when you're hungry, when you haven't slept in days, you haven't eaten, and you probably need to go to the bathroom. So making you think quickly when you're under that kind of stress. So,
Yes.
if you don't put them in those situations, when those situations do happen, they're not going to know how to respond.
Right. And I love that analogy. You know, food, sleep deprivation. You know, you find out everything you are, Rob, in those conditions, and you find out
Mhm.
everything you're not. And that's the part, you know, you need to work on, because as for the most part, blessed Americans who haven't had, at least in my case, you know, never had a want in the world when I was growing up, you know, 3 square meals a day, blah, 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 and then thrown into that environment. That was probably the best thing that ever happened to me, Rob. I appreciate everything now, man. I appreciate this light that's on, this air conditioned environment. I mean, this water and coffee everything, because I know what it's like not to have it,
Sure.
and to kind of, you know, have to deal with those conditions, you know, when you're filthy dirty, and um you know, and if you're in a position of responsibility, you can't so much worry about, obviously, you got to worry about all them, and you know, so it's just, you know, oh, wow, it's not all about me. Wow, Rob, what a concept. I didn't know it wasn't all about me. I thought it was all about me. So
Right.
I think it's a great experience, but like Hegseth was saying, you know, his standard was, would I want my 15-year-old, you know, once he becomes of age to go in the military? Would I feel okay with it? Would I feel that he's going to be getting the training, or she, um, and the leadership that those recruits deserve? They
Yeah.
deserve that. That's the least. I mean, that's the least they should, you know. So that's, I mean, I thought that was great when he brought that up on a, like a personal level, to get people to think. And I think he was trying to, kind of what we were talking about, make people understand that it's a hard life. It's a grim responsibility. You're doing some, you know, I think Troy said it too, you know, they're really, really good at teaching you how to take life, but how to deal
Yeah.
with it afterwards, you know, that's something they can
Yeah.
definitely work on, I think. But I think that was really good when you brought that up on a personal level. So I hope that rang true to some people, despite some of this clamor we're hearing, you know, from the
Well,
speech from some quarters.
Hegseth said we will not lose warfighters because we failed to train or
Yep.
equip them or resource them. Shame on us if we do. Now, what
And,
I'm hoping what we see is a huge spike in recruiting, right? I'm hoping we
yes,
see, because
I'm
I
hoping.
mean, my son went in the Navy, and he had a good, I think he did 10 years in the Navy. But one of the things he used to always tell me was, man, I wish boot camp was harder. I wish, he goes, my boot camp in the Navy was nothing compared to what you went through in the Army. He goes, I wish mine was more like the Army, you know. Uh,
You know, it's so funny you said that, because, you know, of course, it's easy for me to say this now, Rob. You know, I'm 36 years, you know, you know, out of Ranger school, you know, but you know, I should have been should have been worse. Again, it's easy for me to say that now. I know it was really hard for me, no lie. But like the standard is, if I didn't cry myself to sleep every night, it wasn't hard enough.
Yeah.
But no,
I have to
no,
admit,
it
basic
was
was for
hard.
me was easy.
It was difficult.
Basic for me was
Yeah,
easy.
yeah.
I grew up the
That
son of
was
a
almost
Marine.
fun. That was
Yeah.
fun.
I grew up
Right.
the son of a
It
Marine.
was
I'd
almost
been
fun.
shooting since I
Yeah.
was probably 5. I'd rappelled countless times. I'd done, basic training I was in great shape. I was a multi-sport, was
I
nothing
love
for
my
me.
drill sergeants.
Yeah.
I still remember Sergeant Maha Bir Singh, wherever you are. He was from like the Turks and Caicos or something. He did the best cadence. And for some reason, this is funny. I don't know why I was thinking about this, because this is like 38 years ago now. I don't know how long it's been. But I just remember, like, no one wants to see your piss, because he's trying to get people to flush the toilet.
Right.
No one wants to wake up and see your piss in the morning. I don't know. I just think that's the fun. Those guys are funny as hell, man. I mean,
They have a sense of humor.
They got to have a sense of humor for what they're doing, right? It's a very, that's what's great about the military. It's very serious, and life or death and do or die, but at the same time, you got to have this sense of humor just to keep yourself sane. So those guys are funny. The guys at Ranger School and Airborne School, those guys are funny as shit. Maybe not at that specific time, but looking back on, that was weird. But anyway,
my next favorite thing that Hegseth said: it all starts with physical fitness and appearance. If the Secretary of War can do regular hard PT, so can every member of our joint force. Frankly, it's tiring to look at a combat formations, or really any formation, to see fat troops. Likewise, it's completely unacceptable to see fat generals and admirals in the halls of the Pentagon and leading commands around the country and the world. It's a bad look. It's bad, and it's not who we are.
And I would further, amen. I would further that, Rob, because how many of those flag officers had to take administrative action or punitive action against soldiers, sailors, and Marines who weren't meeting the physical fitness standards over their careers? So, where are those guys? And now you're going to the freaking Anthony's Pizza at the PX Mall and Burger King and whatever the heck else they have there now, and you're not upholding the stand. Really? I look back at like pictures of Vietnam and stuff, that era, Rob, and like look at generals and stuff. They're freaking fit.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I'll just use General Wine, he took over I think he became chief of staff after that, but he took over the 25th Infantry Division because my dad was his aide in 1966. And that dude looked like a badass. He had sunglasses on, wearing those green baseball, and all his Hua Go Fast gear. And he was an artillery officer by, whatever his profession and stuff, but he wasn't fat at all. I mean, it was just like, and almost everybody in there was like, and
Sure.
supposedly we ate worse back then, right? We just ate whatever, in the chow hall or whatever. So how did that?
Yeah, I don't know.
Why? That's the very model for me. I mean, and this is like 60 years ago. I'm looking at this stuff because I'm on some 25th ID thing on Instagram, and on this day in history, they were, they show, General Wine, overseeing the troops getting in the ships and going over to Vietnam and stuff. You're like, man, those guys look great. I mean, like starched in it was amazing. Not non-subdued rank, at least initially and stuff, but my God, they looked beautiful. And
even when you consider World War II, right, and how many people were drafted, you still didn't see fat people in the military.
You didn't see fat people.
And those who were drafted in Vietnam, we were taking them right out of teaching jobs, right out of, whatever other jobs, and you didn't have fat people. And here we are, a voluntary force, and it's, overweight people.
That's another whole show, Rob, is why we're, if you just watch a movie from like the mid 60s or something, or if you just say it's like a New York scene and you're just seeing people in the background, you're like, because it kind of hit me one day. I'm like, I don't see anybody that's overweight. And I'm just looking in the background and you're just like, it was the, and so it's interesting. So that's a whole nother show of food
Babe
and
Ruth
stuff,
was a little
but
pudgy, but but he was just pudgy.
there was
He wasn't
exceptions.
fat. Yeah.
There's always exceptions. There's
Yeah.
always, but for the most part, you're like, wow, what happened and what happened? So that's a whole nother show. But it
Right.
is interesting. Just I'm looking back at this stuff, going, wow, look at that. I mean, they looked great. I mean, they
Mhm.
wow, that was pretty awesome. But
Right.
but
Well,
anyway, so that
we've
yeah, it
been
was
going for an hour,
yeah.
so
Can you
it
believe
goes
it?
by
It
really
goes
quick.
fast, Rob.
It
Having a
does.
good
It does.
time. Having a
So
great
anything you
time.
want to leave with?
No, let's just. I mean, yeah, I guess just. I'm curious what the what the results will be of this, and I'd be curious if we could ever find out through some, a guest you have or that Troy has going forward or whatever. What are the results of this going forward? How um, will it actually have the desired effect, or will there be a lot of mumbling and grumbling and pushback as best they can and things like that. I don't know. I'm just curious to see. It was great to hear.
Mhm.
Now the real test comes and say implementation and enforcement, and let's see, because I would like to have them have the same Army parade in like 2 years that they had, a couple months back, and see the difference. Because there was stuff in the parade I'm kind of like, I don't
Yeah.
know. It could have been back to, these guys really need their shot group tightened up a little bit on their uniform standards. And I'm not even an NCO, and I'm just sitting there going,
Right.
it looks like so just like almost like have a retest, if you will,
Yeah.
and then because real quick, even as a comparison, you can find it like Google the 82nd Airborne Victory March down, in New York City after World War II. You see the difference. It's
Yeah.
like, oh my God, it looked like a machine, man. It looked like a machine. It was like, damn, it was freaking beautiful. So to me, that's like the standard.
Well,
And
there's a couple of
those guys
layers to that,
didn't,
right?
yeah.
One, how's the world going to react, right? What are we going to see from our
Yes.
enemies? You know,
Yes.
how many more shots does Kim Jong Un, how many missiles does he fire off, and throw a tantrum, and then how does the military react? Are we going to see a lot of retirements at the
Yeah.
top, and are we going to see higher recruiting numbers, or are we going to see lower recruiting numbers? I mean, they've
Yep.
already been breaking records with recruiting, anyway, since this
Right.
administration started. And then the third thing that worries me is what happens at the end of this administration, right? If heaven forbid
Yes. I know.
AOC gets in there for whatever reason, are
Can
we just
you
gonna
imagine?
are we gonna change the uniform again from what it is currently to pink?
Yes.
I don't know.
Yes.
So
I agree. That's what I'm saying. We will see what happens. And again, the audience was larger than the room full of generals in the United States for sure. So
yeah,
we'll see what happens. So it's very interesting. So we need to monitor that. So again, we can have a follow up show or whatever. It'd just be interesting to get some insights from people for future
yeah,
shows to see what's happening now and to see kind of where we are months and maybe years from now.
yeah. Reach out to some recruiters and see if they can tell us,
Yeah, great
before and
idea. Yeah,
after,
see stuff
kind of.
like that.
Yeah.
Right.
All righty, sir.
Perfect.
Anything else?
Well, no, that's it. So thank you so much, Rob, for having me. Really enjoyed it. This is important stuff and always
Yeah.
great stuff to talk. And it's always great talking with you about anything. So again, thanks for having me on.
Yeah. Well, don't forget to visit our sponsors, Gear for Grunts. Get your Rapid Access Magazine pods for your AR style
There's right
devices.
here.
Alpha
Go
Elite
right there.
Performance. There you go. There you go. Demonstration.
There you go.
Get your
That's
Alpha Elite
simple.
Performance. Take your workouts to the next level. Enlist the Night Fight Company for great looking apparel. Everybody have a good evening. Thank you for spending your time with us. Thank you, Doug. And
You're welcome.
have a great
Thank you.
weekend.
Yeah. God bless. Thank you.